It's warm.
Good. Your camera on, Joe?
We're on.
You're on? Okay. Well, season's greetings, good evening. Welcome to Monday, December 4th, Town of Tuftonboro Selectmen's meeting. Before we begin, can we stand in honor of America by reciting the pledge? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start with public input.
Back at town meeting, we voters authorized some money to work with the Mirror Lake boat launch area. Do those funds need to be encumbered because it looks like it's not going to get done this year?
Yes.
They do. Well, I would ask you please to do that before the deadline, if you would. Thank you.
Sure.
My name is Seamus O'Scally. I'd like to say a few things about the plan to put a hiking trail on the Libby Parkland. Just so you know, I'm the abutter of the property at 767 North Main Street. Yes.
We have Libby Park, Steve Wingate and Gene Kelly at 410 are slated to speak on that.
Should I just let you guys go ahead?
Okay.
What?
Yeah, that's...
All right, yeah, that's fine.
It's a work in progress, yeah? Okay. As a matter of fact, if there's nothing else from the public, why
So
don't we...
he can speak during that time? Can Seamus speak during that time after 4:10 if it's not a public input session?
That's up to the board. I'll ask them if they want someone other than the appointed people to speak.
Okay.
I would like to speak as well, as whatever, however you want me
Okay.
to be represented.
Well, we want to be flexible. Nothing else public? Well, why don't we start with Libby Park, Steve Wingate, and Gene Kelly? Come on down. Sound like Monty Hall, don't
I can find my glasses here so I can see what I'm looking at. I'm sorry.
Got a handout.
Just so you folks know, we got meetings scheduled with other people right straight through to 5:30, so
Okay, well,
we'll let everybody speak reasonably, but I'm going to move it along.
no, fine. Be happy. Okay, I think it was October 16th at our regular meeting. Lloyd asked us to look into the proposal for Libby Park. Alana, I'll be director of Libby Museum. Could you read the proposal?
Sure. The Libby Museum, owned and operated by the town of Wolfboro, serves the public with museum displays demonstrating natural history and offers programs for children and adults seeking to provide knowledge of the natural world. This includes how plants, animals, and wildlife habitat function, how important they are to people, and how we can preserve them into the future. The museum staff and volunteers have attempted to set up a demonstration area in a small available corner of the museum lot for tree, plant, and wildlife habitat identification. Its small size and limited features make it barely adequate for the purpose. The adjacent area known as Libby Park and owned by the town of Tuftonboro has a greater area, larger variety of plants and trees, plus examples of wildlife habitat and use. It also has a shoreline where aquatic habitats could be discussed. The Libby Museum would like to locate a walking path in the park that could be used for environmental education. This could be in the form of guided walks or a self-guided format of the important features of a natural habitat and how plants and animals interact to form an ecosystem. The path will be carefully located to provide a safe walking experience for the public while avoiding any important habitat features, rare or unusual plants, and the shoreline. A limited amount of vegetation and or dead or downed trees will be removed only where necessary for public safety. Where needed, regulatory signs may be used, and there will be small tags identifying different important features of the area. Most dialogue about the features will be presented by a guide or handout material for a self-guided walk. All parking will be in the museum parking area, and users would enter the Libby Park from the museum. When possible, museum staff or volunteers would orientate self-guided groups about the rules and what to expect before they leave the museum building. The walking path will only be used during daylight hours. No launching or landing of canoes, kayaks, or boats will be allowed, and obviously no swimming. Museum staff or volunteers will conduct regular patrols to prevent vandalism, pick up trash, and ensure that instructional signage is maintained. The museum will do its best to mitigate or minimize any effects to abutters and discuss plans with them as the project develops. The museum will do all this within the restrictions in the deed dated 7/30/2007 and will coordinate the walking path located and maintained through the Tufton Borough Conservation Commission. Thank you.
So after Lloyd asked us to look into this project, I got a copy of the deed, which has some pretty specific restrictions in it. And the proposal that was originally made wouldn't be able to do it under those restrictions. So I got back with Elena, and we put together another proposal that would fit under those restrictions. After we had our meeting on the commission met on November 13th, and we heard the revised proposal, and then we went out and looked at the site. And then on our regular meeting on 11/20, we discussed it. And some of the discussion involved, I think, misunderstanding the way it was written. So I volunteered to work with Elena and make it more specific and clear about who's responsible for what. And that's the last one that Elena just read. That's the revised proposal. So at our meeting, after we discussed it, first we had a motion to table the recommendation for a month to do some more research. And that motion failed, and then we had a motion to recommend the principle of the project. When I say principle, that's because there actually isn't a trail laid out or located. It's just the idea of doing it. And part of that motion was that the Conservation Commission would be involved in the trail design, layout, and maintenance, and that the Mirror Lake Protective Association, we're recommending that you listen to the Mirror Lake Protective Association before you make a decision. The Conservation Commission has limited its analysis to what would affect environmentally on the site, and not some of the other considerations that I'm sure Jean's going to talk about. Our mission statement, and it's on the website, is to ensure the proper protection, promotion of management and natural resources in Tufton Borough, to further an awareness of the conservation practices and policies throughout the town so that such preservation is achieved for the benefit of all present and future residents, to educate and encourage the public and to make informed decisions about our natural resources. We felt the proposal knitted together pretty well with those three objectives. And then the last one, to advise other town boards, town officials, developers, landowners, the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, and utilization and protection of the natural resources in the town of Tuftonboro. That kind of fits with the idea of us looking at the project and making a recommendation. So we feel the proposal fits well into 3 objectives in our mission statement. And that's a formal way of saying that's why we're recommending the project. There are 3 key points I think we looked at. We do not think the proposal would do environmental harm to the site or prevent it from remaining in a natural state. The proposal can be administered within the deed restrictions. The proposal would serve the public need to inform and educate children and adults for the need to use and conserve natural resources wisely. The Libby Museum already offers those programs, and the Libby Park is ideally located to support that activity. This is our opinion. There are certainly other ways to look at it. The things we considered include restriction number 2, which seems to imply that public daytime recreation is expected, and it is possible, and those figures following along, the deed restrictions are on the next page. So number 2 says the use of the property shall only be for the daytime recreation activities for members of the public, and as the guarantee may permit, that's Tuftonboro or Selectmen being a guarantee. And so we get from that statement that those restrictions were written with the idea that there would be some recreation there. Would it be safer and less impacting? Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. All right. Would it be safer and less impacting to organize use onto a pathway? In other words, you could have people wandering around out there, and I think right now there would be nothing to stop Libby Museum from, because they are the public, from wandering around in groups and doing this education thing. So would it be safer and less impacting to organize that onto a pathway? Can this be done under the restrictions? Restriction number 6, which restriction number 6 basically says you can't move any dirt. And that, when we went out and looked at the site, walked around, we felt like there was enough level places without rocks so that you could safely navigate a group around out there without having to actually construct anything. Does restriction 8 provide authority to remove dead trees or low ground vegetation for a safe walking of the pathway? And we think it does. I think you could read it your own way and interpret it another way. If the project is approved, we would like to be involved to ensure that the project meets our expectation. That is, that the pathway would be very carefully located, not only just for safety, but to stay away from some of the key little habitats or things that you would want to use to demonstrate to people. Trees with wildlife living in them, a hollow hold, or a squirrel's nest or something like that. You wouldn't want to take away any of the value of the site by locating the trail in a spot like that. Or if we happen to find any rare plants, any plants we would want to use as a demonstration. So that kind of thing. There is one spot out on the shoreline where there's a large rock. It's a great spot to bring people to talk about shoreline habitat, shoreline preservation. There's some good examples you can actually see from that spot, and yet it's really solid because there's a big rock there. So it's things like that that would be important in getting this trail just right, and that's why we'd like to be involved. And then we know there's other points of view, so we're encouraging you to listen to those. And regardless of what you decide, there are some invasive plants growing on the shoreline. And because it's tough rural property, I think we should remove them. So that's about, oh, one more thing, the map here. On the handout, I sketched in an approximate location, the kind of place we wandered around through in our field trip, and saw that it was possible to have a walking path there without doing any ground disturbance, and it would be safe. But that's only an approximate location. The only specific thing, if you look on this right of way here, this area right from the edge of the road down to about here is really steep. It's not safe, to protect the privacy of the abutters. It would be nice to propose a trail coming in this way and kind of leaving a vegetative screen before you actually get down into here. But this is way too steep for safe walking. And there also is a lot of dense vegetation. And then also, at some time in the past, this right-of-way was improved, and a lot of boulders were moved, and they were all moved to this side. So there isn't a safe way to pick your way through those boulders until you get down to about here. So that necessitates, if you had a group that you were taking out there, you would have to come down that trail, which is right next to the butter's property. I think that's, if I left out anything,
Sounds good.
group?
Good job.
I think that's a synopsis of what we talked about and our rationale. I could sum up our rationales. We want to sell conservation. The Living Museum already does that, particularly with their program with kids. And we think this is just the right place to promote that kind of thing. So I think that's our strongest perspective on it. The conservation's important, and this is a great place to sell it.
All set.
I think that's, unless you have any questions, that's what's on our mind.
Go ahead, Gene.
Okay, well, first of all,
Does everybody know who you are?
my name is Gene Kelly. I'm the president of Mirror Lake Protective Association. I'd just like to thank the Board of Commissioners, and I guess thank Steve for affording me the opportunity to talk to you and present our position on this here. And I think I've submitted a letter, and I think it's self-explanatory. I won't read the letter. But we were somewhat disappointed, the MLPA was somewhat disappointed that this had gone as far as it had gone with us not having a seat at the table, being invited in any way, shape, or form to participate in this. I know that two of the members of the Mirror Lake Protective Association, Larry Gill and Nancy Bird, are also in the TCC, but nonetheless, nothing ever formal was done. The way I became aware was through a series of emails, and quite frankly, through the emails and concerns of the abutters, the property abutters, such as Seamus and Melanie and Val Zenick, that they became aware that this proposal was taking place. So that's how I got involved in this. And secondly, I think I have nothing but kudos to say about the Libby. I think it's a wonderful facility. I take my grandchildren there, and believe me, the Mirror Lake Protection Association is all for conservation, as you know. In fact, we're actively pursuing whatever we can do around the lake to get properties under the conservation easements and whatnot. I mean, we don't want we're for conservation. So we're for the levee, we're for conservation, and we're certainly for kids understanding nature and appreciating it. But I think this property has a history. Okay. And I'm a relatively newcomer. I've only owned the property since 2007. I've only lived here, and basically I'm a snowbird, so I've only lived here for 6 months out of the year, starting in 2012. But I am aware that around 2005, somewhere in that area, that there was a proposal to totally clear this lot, so there could be a view from 109 to both lakes or something, and that was the genesis of the deed, and the restrictions as to the use of the property was to protect that property in its natural environment and its natural habitat, and not to let the property be developed in any way. And the deed's pretty clear in the restrictions as to what the intent is. It's also clear that it's for public use. It's clearly for public use. Middle Lake Protective Association in no way, shape, or form saying the public can't use it. Anybody can walk in there anytime they want, but I mean, we're not saying you can't. That's not what it's all about. What we're concerned about is developing a facility that will, if it's successful in what the Libby wants it to be, it will be used. And if it's going to be successful in use, that means there's going to be a number of people that are going to be transiting this property, and it does impact the adjacent property owners who happen to be members of the MLPA, and they've expressed concern, and I think rightfully so. Especially when the intent all along was to restrict the use of the property. Now this trail through here, I think is the deed's restricted. That's a snowmobile trail, and that was done, I guess, in some sort of compromise when this whole deed was developed. But to successfully put a trail in, you're going to have to do things that the deed says you can't do, and that's plain and simple. The deed has restrictions for a reason. Now, I'm sure they're good intentions, and I'm sure you can mitigate a lot of it, but the fact remains that the deed restricts the use. It's very specific on what you can do, and in deference to the adjacent property owners, I think that it's not the proper thing to do. The property should be left, the parcel should be left as it is. And of course, you know, I've cited that the you know, and Stephen, in fairness, as what you've said, it's in a sensitive natural environment. Any disturbance of anything along the shore we've learned over the years that you shouldn't be destroying, that you shouldn't be taking vegetation along the shore. No more lawns and beaches or things of that nature. We learned the hard way that that's not a good thing, and it's important that that's maintained. And the deed is very clear on no removal of the vegetation, and it was other than the removal for the health of the vegetation. It wasn't for other reasons. It specifically says it's for the health of the vegetation. That's why you can go in there and do it. So a trail is certainly something that was not, I don't think, ever intended. I think it should be left in its natural state. I said the public can go in there. We're not saying they can't. But I said, so for those reasons, and particularly for in deference to the adjacent property owners, and I think Seamus is going to want to say something here if he has the time, as being an adjacent property owner, why we feel that this is not a good idea. So that's our position, and I thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation, and we'll look there.
I just want to say that in our discussions, there were a lot of desire to know what the original, intentions of Dr. Libby were, or his heirs, and I kept coming back to people saying that's irrelevant to our role here. We have a deed, it has restrictions in it, and we have a proposal, and that's what we try to limit ourselves to. Just want to throw that in.
And I appreciate that, because again, that becomes moot. I mean, I'm not an attorney, and we're not being represented by an attorney. I don't want this to get even to sound like that from this side of the table. Okay, I mean, but I think it's clear that okay, there may have been a will that said certain things, but this deed is pretty specific, and it was done for a very specific reason. So I appreciate you pointing that out, because I think we're also in agreement that that's where this should be coming from.
And my understanding is this deed was done specifically because there was a threat that the property might be clear-cut.
Correct.
Totally.
Correct.
So perhaps when this deed was done, it was done maybe more restrictively than what was intended out of the original estate. I don't know. Just a suggestion.
Again, I don't know, but the deed says what it says. Whether the reasons for it, or weren't, or wasn't it good at the time. I mean, if you're talking about amending a deed, that's a whole other issue. But if you stick with our position, you stick with what the deed says. The deed says what it says. I mean, and it's pretty specific about the use. And again, I go back to the property above it, the adjacent property owners. I mean, in this here, pointing out here, I mean, clearly, if you're familiar with the site, I mean, you know, Seamus's property is right here. There's going to be people coming down here. I don't think it's along this path, very close to their dining room, their living room. And the snowmobile trail, you say, well, the snowmobile trail is seasonal. And there aren't a lot of people around there, and it's seasonal if we ever get snow again. But it's not the same. This thing to be effective and to be used, to the extent that I understand that Libby would like to use it, well, then it's going to have quite a few people using it. And these kids, the children, they're going to have to walk across these people's driveways. Granted, they're within the right-of-way, but it's still busy 109. It's not a great place to be going across, and they are crossing basically people's driveways between the right-of-way and the road proper. So they're in effect crossing a driveway. We all know that the town owns so many feet, or the state owns in a right-of-way so many feet from the edge of pavement. But it's still basically, I mean, it's up to you to maintain the snow plowing and whatnot. It's your driveway. And these groups would be crossing these driveways, and that's not really fair to the abutters. And so that's where it comes from. Can James say something?
Any questions or comments from the board?
Well, I'm going to obviously recuse myself from any decision, but looking at the restrictions, number 2, the use of the property shall only be for daytime recreational activities by members of the public as the guarantee may permit. The foregoing notwithstanding, the guarantee may permit members of the public daytime or non-daytime use of the existing snowmobile trail.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there movement here on the part of the Mirror Lake people?
On what?
On the use of the property. I mean, obviously the restrictions spell out that the snow machine trail at the very least can be used as public access to the property.
I mean, that was always, that again, I can't speak for why the deed was proposed. That was in the deed. Maybe that trail was grandfathered in. Maybe when this deed was negotiated, they say, hey, there's a trail there that's going to take precedent that has to remain to get this deed in. I really don't know to answer your question. But to answer your question about given, you know, I mean, I'm representing the MLPA and the MLPA's position on this from what we've seen so far is we're opposed to it. To answer your question directly, for the reason I just stated.
So random use by the public is more preferable than organized use by the public?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. Yeah, as far as the MLP is concerned, yes, that's correct. I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, you don't see anybody doing it, but there's no reason that somebody can't walk along and walk in here with fishing, fly rods, fishing tackle, and fish off the shore. I mean, they got every right in the world to do it. I mean, and we don't object to it. We're not saying it's the MLPA's property and nobody can go on it. No, it's public property. It's going to be used, just not for this purpose.
Point of order.
Excuse.
What is the process here for the selectmen? Do they have a hearing on it? They just take this input today and make a decision? What is the procedure here?
These people asked to come in and speak. And they're speaking.
And it's your prerogative whether you decide today or schedule something further, or?
Correct. Okay. We've gone over a few minutes, but I'll tell you what, the 2 people asked to speak. And I guess I'll ask, could you speak for 2 minutes?
I'll be quick.
Yeah. You speak for 2
I think
minutes.
Gene did a really good job.
I want to be fair to all of you.
Yeah, I think Gene did a really good job describing the issue with the deed. The exceptions to removing trees are removal of dead or diseased trees, removal of trimming of trees, brush or vegetation with a hazard to persons or property, and removals of trees, brush or vegetation for wildlife management purposes. I don't see cutting a trail as either for hazard removal or wildlife management. So I concur with what Gene said. I think that also you sort of have to be on the property to just see how close our dining room window is to the snowmobile trail. Now, we knew when we bought the house there was a snowmobile trail, so we deal with it. You know, it is what it is. You know, we knew it was there when we bought the house. But I think for one, as Gene mentioned, the snowmobile trail is used maybe 2 months a year, and maybe there's 1 or 2 snow machines a day. It's not, we can deal with it. It's not classrooms of kids wandering down the trail, wandering into our property, and that's a significant loss of privacy. All right, I don't want to take up any more of your time.
Okay,
I'll just leave it at that.
thank you. You asked us
Thank
to-
you.
just a couple.
Yes, basically what I want to do is to ask some questions. Steve covered some of this. What does natural state, does it permit even a minimal path on the property? What is needed for the grantee to provide daytime recreational activities of the public as the grantee may permit? These are things that we need to decide. Could we move a rock from the path, given paragraph 6, that might trip a member of the public? Is that possible? And what constitutes a hazard to persons or property? There could be more than one interpretation of these words. The answer to these questions will determine what, if any, trail may be provided. If the answer to one is yes, then we can answer number 2, which is to provide for daytime recreational activities. Otherwise, we can't do it. And that's it.
We've gone over a few minutes. Anything else from the board?
Do I get thrown out for this?
No, as I mentioned, I'm going to keep on this.
Do we need to make a decision tonight?
Absolutely not.
We'll table this.
That's my recommendation.
It also gives an opportunity, anyone who sees us on YouTube or anybody here who wants to correspond or thinks of something that they want to correspond about, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't, in the paperwork I was given, it starts with Article 4, so I don't know what happened 1, 2, 3. But that might be of interest to you guys.
Take a field trip. We'd be glad to take you,
That'd be great.
show you how we were thinking.
Just for the record, Gene, I went back and looked at the November minutes, and Leanne does a great job. And it was moved by Steve Wingate and seconded by Ray Evers to recommend the Libby Park proposal in principle to the Board of Selectmen with involvement of the Conservation Commission with the layout, design, and maintenance of the trail, and request the Board of Selectmen to seek input from the MLPA prior to their decision.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think I acknowledge that. But I just gave you a brief how I actually became, well, I was with us, and I thank Steve for doing it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everyone have a nice holiday, okay?
All right, yes, you too.
And Steve, you wanted to talk about watershed plan?
Oh, yeah, well, that's quick.
Hey, Gene, have a good winter.
Travel safe.
You're headed out.
No, thank you very much. Thank you. Take care. Good, thank you. Thank you. Steve, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I thought it was